This is a heavy book. It's close to 700 pages long. 700! That's more than Hero System 5th edition, and that was basically an encyclopedia for building absolutely anything within its game engine. The initial 100 pages are mostly fiction describing the world of Exalted. I don't normally care much for huge swaths of exposition, as anybody who's seen my review of Slay Industries might remember. However, this is actually well written. The first few pages, while lacking an explanation of what a solar, lunar, and sidereal were, didn't screw around with long-winded sequences of events like Slay Industries did. It gave me this setup. The heroes of old, the Solars, are waking up to a world on the brink of war between all kinds of different factions, some of which were their friends. And then it points me to how the book is laid out, and what's in what chapter. Basically, the first 2 chapters are setting information, the 3rd and 4th are character creation, and the last 5 chapters have game mechanics and all the stuff you need to use them with. At any rate, the setting of the game is that the world is poised for a great war between demigods, known as the Exalted, and there are several different kinds of them. This core book, though, focuses mainly on the Solar Exalted, who were great heroes of justice that are meant to bring order to the world. This is a game that uses several 10-sided dice. Anytime your character's ability is called into question, you gather up several dice and roll them to determine if they succeed or not. In general, you roll a number of dice equal to an attribute and an ability relevant to your task, such as intelligence and medicine to diagnose and treat some horrible disease somebody has. If you had a 3 in intelligence and a 4 in medicine, you would then roll 7 dice. After rolling, you'll be looking for numbers on the dice that are 7 or higher. Any such dice grant you 1 success on that action. Additionally, any 10s count as 2 successes. The number of successes needs to meet or beat a difficulty number set by the GM, with 1 being simple enough that anybody could feasibly do it, such as if we were to figure out if someone needed brain surgery or if they just have a head cold. If we were to try and perform said brain surgery by candlelight, though, we could bump up the difficulty to 3. And if we were to do so without proper tools and tied up like Harry Houdini, you could expect that difficulty to shoot up to 5. If you get enough successes to meet or beat that difficulty number, your character, well, succeeds, and otherwise they fail. If they don't get any successes at all, and at least 1 dice shows up showing 1, that's considered a botch, which is failing so spectacularly that it makes things more complicated. Going back to our disease example, you might mistake a head cold to be something else entirely, and give them the wrong treatment, like brain surgery, which only makes their sickness worse, or perhaps in this case kills them. You might also gain some bonuses or penalties based on your equipment you have handy, or other circumstances. Having a book on various physical ailments might grant you a few bonus dice, as could knowing that there's been a head cold going around the town. There's also rolls for extended actions that can be made, where rolling the dice determines how much progress you make on a given task in a certain amount of time. Extended actions have a difficulty number, and a number of dice you roll like their normal counterparts. They also have a goal number, which is the amount of successes you're trying to accumulate. An interval, which represents how much time you're spending when you do each roll, as well as what's referred to as a terminus, which is how many rolls you get to make before you automatically fail. To use our brain surgery example, you might have a goal number of 10, at difficulty 2, and at an interval of 10 minutes per roll, meaning you would need to get at least 2 successes to make any progress, and anything beyond those 2 are just making more progress for that roll. So if you roll 4 successes on your brain surgery roll, 2 will count towards the initial success, and the other 2 will be added towards your goal, for a total of 3. Both of these kinds of rolls can be made against another character's roll, with whoever gets more successes being the one who gets their preferred outcome, or in the case of an extended roll, whoever reaches their goal first. Combat and social interactions are the most notable examples of this, but those use some additional more complicated subsystems, and I'll cover those in a different video. So let's move on to character creation. The first step is to come up with a concept for your character. It's not exactly necessary, but it'll help guide you in making your character, and there's really no wrong answer to it. Concept could be anything from a big burly bodyguard that believes in protecting those who can't protect themselves, to a doctor who believes that above all else, his job is to heal the sick. This is a game about demigods, so it's okay to go with something wildly over the top, and if you're playing a Solar Exalted, which is the only one supported in this book, it should be a character with benevolent motivations. In addition to your concept, you also choose their caste, which determines a few special abilities you get, as well as what skills will be easier for you to improve. Each caste represents a particular idea, as follows. The Dawn caste are warriors, the Zenith caste are priests, the Twilight caste are scholars and craftsmen, while the Night caste are spies and assassins, and the Eclipse caste are diplomats. Your concept and caste don't necessarily need to match perfectly, but it's just certain castes, based on the abilities they grant, are more conducive to certain concepts. Next, you start putting numbers onto your character sheet, starting with attributes. These are your character's raw talents, and they're divided into 3 groups. The physical attributes, which are strength, dexterity, and stamina. The social, which are charisma, manipulation, and appearance. And the mental, which are perception, intelligence, and wits. Every stat starts off with a rating of 1, and then you prioritize those by primary, secondary, and tertiary. First most important, second most important, and least important. Your primary group gives you an additional 8 dots to fill in, with the secondary giving you an extra 6, and the tertiary giving you 4. So if you choose physical to be your primary, you can then divide up your additional 8 dots, so that you have strength and stamina at 5, leaving dexterity at 1. Since each attribute starts off at 1, you'll be able to max out 2 of your primary attributes by leaving one of them at its starting level, though you'll most likely want to take a more even-handed approach, since a 2 is the score for an average human being, with 5 being the peak of human ability. Next, you pick 5 of your caste's abilities, and then 5 other abilities to be your favorite abilities. Caste and favorite abilities are easier to improve and learn charms for. They generally cost less experience points to improve. Your caste abilities are listed on page 121. After that, you choose one of your caste abilities to be your supernal ability. This is what your character is the absolute best at, the thing they will be recognized as a legend for. Your essence rating will be considered 5 for the purpose of acquiring and upgrading charms for this ability. As a special note, martial arts cannot be chosen as a caste or favorite ability. However, if you choose brawl as a favorite or caste ability, you get to have martial arts as that same kind of ability. Anybody who gains martial arts ability must also have the martial arts merit. Dawn castes, however, can choose martial arts or brawl as their supernal ability, but they may only choose one for that purpose. After you've decided your caste, favorite, and supernal abilities, you then get 28 points to divide among all of your abilities. None of your abilities may be higher than 3 dots, and all of your favorite and caste abilities have to start with at least 1 dot in them. Additionally, and I like that this is mentioned in the book, if you want any dots in non-caste or non-favorite abilities, now is the time to get them. Finally, you get 4 specialties to apply to your abilities. These are slightly more narrow areas your abilities could be applied to. For example, melee could have a specialty of swords, while medicine could have a specialty of brain surgery. Specialties can be as narrow or as broad as you like, but there should still be some cases where it wouldn't apply, and your GM has the final say on what's too broad or too narrow. A description of all the abilities starts on page 150, along with what they're useful for. Merits are some quirks that define some final loose details of your character, such as being physically huge, or having a vault of treasure, or even a cult of loyal worshippers. Some merits can be improved over time, and others cannot. You can't somehow become more huge, but you can add more treasure to your vault, or convince more people to worship you. You get 10 points to spend on merits, and the description for those starts on page 157. There's 3 classifications for merits you should know about: innate, purchased, and story. Innate merits can only be acquired during character creation. Once the game has started, they're no longer available to you. Purchase can be acquired and improved both during character creation as well as after the game starts. Story merits, however, can only be acquired at the start of the game, but afterwards, the only way to improve them or acquire them is if the GM says that you gained them through something you've done through the course of the game. Next is charms. These are what make up a bulk of the book, to the effect of about a third of it. They're supernatural abilities and feats your character is capable of, the things that make them a living legend. And you've got plenty of room to play around with them since you start off with 15 of them. If there's some other thing you want, like martial arts charms, sorceress spells, or artifact evocations, you can also spend your solar charms for those on a one-for-one basis. Solar charms have abilities associated with them, and thus are used to enhance actions using those abilities. Abilities are also part of the prerequisites of charms, in addition to your character's essence rating and other charms you might know. They start on page 250, and due to how complex charms are, I'll be covering those in more detail in another video. The next step is to decide your Intimacies and your limit trigger. These are the characteristics that define your character's behavior in Exalted. Intimacies are things your characters care about, for good or ill. You choose 4 of them upon creation. They can feasibly be anything, but there's a few rules you need to follow when you choose them. One needs to be defining, meaning it's the very core of their beliefs, and this is something that always comes to mind when they make decisions. Another needs to be major, which is important and only influences the character if they're at least somewhat related to what's going on. The rest, if you like, can be minor, meaning they only sway the character when they're immediately present. Additionally, one of the 4 Intimacies has to be a positive feeling, and at least one of them also has to be a negative feeling. Some examples of Intimacies could be love for one's spouse, hating an enemy, or admiring an organization. On the other hand, Limit Trigger is a specific action that a Solar Exalted cannot perform, or a situation they cannot be in. If they are or they do, it causes them to become beset with immense feelings of grief, in the form of what the game calls Limit. More details on how Limit Triggers work start on page 134. Finally, you have 15 bonus points to add to various different things to even out any rough edges in your character. There's a chart for what costs how much, and these points can be spent at any point during character creation, such as if you're choosing merits and you realize you need more in a particular attribute for a merit that you want. Another thing I like about this book is that on page 124, the book once again gives you a hint at effectively building your character. Merits and caste or favorite abilities are the cheapest and most cost-effective to use your bonus points on. Meanwhile, tertiary attributes are also easy to build up, if you have some sort of weakness there that you don't want to deal with. The last thing to do is to fill out some of the default traits all Solar Exalted characters have. You have 7 health levels, an essence rating of 1 dot, you have 5 dots of willpower, a personal essence pool, which is your essence rating, times 3 with 10 added to it, and a peripheral essence pool, which is your essence rating times 7 with 26 added to that. After that, your character is pretty much done, and the only parts left at this point are to add those final touches that make them go from being a series of dots and numbers to being a living, breathing character. So that's the basics of character creation for Exalted 3rd Edition. It's kind of a long process, but only because there's just so many charms to choose from. And I'd also avoid coming up with an over-elaborate backstory for your character, just in case your character winds up mechanically incapable of half the stuff you want them to be able to do. So, with all that said, I am Aaron Dershadel, and I will see you all next time. Thanks for watching. I hope you found this video helpful, and if you did, I'd appreciate if you gave me a click of that like button. If you want to see more videos where I explain other aspects of complicated games, there's a few of those floating around as well, such as one for Anima Beyond Fantasy and another for Shadowrun 5th Edition. And remember, videos on the internet are never a replacement for reading your rulebook.